Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another forecast. So, in today's forecast, we're going to be talking about severe weather for this whole region right here, as well as possible snow, probably early next week, somewhere in the Midwest, Great Lakes region, maybe even the Northeast. And then afterwards, I'm probably going to be looking at the future products over a week in advance, just because I've been seeing a few patterns I think are kind of interesting. All that out of the way, let's begin. So the current situation right now is a low pressure system moving through the south right now. Texas right around here. I'm gonna draw a few outlines because people seem to approve of that. Texas somewhere around here, Louisiana here, Mississippi, Alabama, etc. And something we've been seeing a lot is just boatloads of rain, severe weather. It's really just focused down here. And again, that is a byproduct of El Nino, right? Something I talked about before is that El Nino essentially is when a huge low pressure system over the Pacific Ocean, it's very strong and will continually send the polar jet stream up here to the north, way up in Canada, and that's what we're seeing here. Not an amazing arrow. And then the subtropical jet stream will get sent more southerly, which is right down here. This is a little easier to see at the 500 millibar level. So you can see up here, this is our polar jet stream. This may also be a byproduct of our polar jet stream. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. As we move further on into the week as well, this is our subtropical. This is going to be a lot more southern focused, and this is more northern focused. So something we'll continually see is a bunch of rain for this region here, the south, and maybe some snow for the Midwest and stuff. More Alberta Clipper systems that kind of form up here and move in a southeasterly fashion. And that is what we have been seeing due to El Nino. So for severe weather, I'm going to look at that now. So for the southeast right now, there's a 500 millibar trough that's basically centered right here, right? So this is going back a little bit far. Currently, it's I believe 4Z. So this is actually a past product in a way. But essentially, this 500 millibar low pressure system right here, this is moving its way on track somewhat like this. If I skip forward here a little bit, we can kind of see that happen. This is our center of low at the moment. So the way these wind barbs are moving is like right here. You have this one moving here. I'm just kind of showing it right here. We have a bit of rotation, which is indicative of a low pressure system. So essentially what this is going to be doing is pulling in, again, moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, which we can see here in dew point. I'm also going to get a little closer to this look because this is a very specified area of possible severe weather. I don't want to go too in depth into it just because the risk isn't huge, but we will be looking at it in general. It's just that's mainly what's going on at the moment. Essentially, the dew points here are a lot higher than anywhere else. I mean, 33 degrees versus 66 here. It's double, right? And there's this very small region here, indicated by these red dashes and stuff here. That means lifted index. Essentially, what that means is convection is more likely and will be more enhanced in that area. So we skip forward, you can see this open warm sector here. I'm going to highlight it in yellow. Essentially, this region is our open warm sector, and our low pressure system will be focused right here. Now, if I go back, a few hours here, I'm going to look at the NAM-NST as well, just because it has a little higher definition. So essentially, there's a cold front, which is being draped somewhere around here, blue line, and a warm front right about here, right? So as this low pressure system moves on this way, it's going to create forcing near the surface. If I look at temperature, see a similar thing, right? Colder temperatures on this side, warmer on this side. You can see the greens here and more of the reds over here. Now, the main forcing that's going to be coming with this system is some small convergence bands over Alabama. So this is also easier to see on the HRRR. I apologize for jumping over products so much, but sometimes they have higher resolutions, and that's very helpful. So at the surface here, if we remember, wind barbs, essentially they look kind of like this. This is our station plot. That means winds are going this direction. So here we have winds, they're a little more out of the east, so they have a little bit of a western component. And these ones here, you can kind of see, have a little bit more of a easterly component. And that kind of means that there could be these little convergence bands that form here, and that could lead to some updrafts that form. That's our main method of forcing because of this low pressure system. But personally, I don't think this is going to be too severe, just because there's not much to work with. So this is our morning line of convection, and behind it there will be this not super favorable region, just because all of this is going to take all of the instability in the atmosphere. It's kind of going to drain it, right? At the moment on satellite, we can see, I can see all this. So this is our radar, and we also have watches and warnings. I'll take those away for right now. But essentially what's kind of happening here is all these storms are starting to get more linear, right? So you can see in this little region in Louisiana, they're starting to kind of pop up, and you can kind of see a little line forming. This line here is going to move its way on this way, get a little bigger and stuff. Essentially, it's going to suck out all the good moisture, really. It's going to be a very limited time frame for these storms to really use, and that's what we're working with. These updrafts here could end up being somewhat supercellular, just depending on what could happen. But again, the HRRR here doesn't seem to think they'll do too well. We can look at 3 Cape through the HRRR as well, which is essentially just how much instability is there in the lowest levels of the atmosphere. That's where tornadoes thrive, is near the surface. And there does seem to be this little swath of 3 Cape that kind of blows on through with these storms, but it's not really enough to really get tornadoes going. We can look at surface vorticity as well. This also has 3 Cape values, and the surface vorticity it's not super strong. It's not really, this isn't showing tornadoes to me too much. The SPC right now has a slight risk over this region. It's possible this gets downed. I think they'll probably maintain it. It seems like this is mostly for the morning convection, so that morning line of storms could be rotating and have embedded supercells. It's kind of hard to tell. We'll see how that pans out. And for the day 3 outlook, which is going to be day 2 very soon, again, in both of these cases, right, this one has a tornado outlook of 5% in this region. This one doesn't even have any severe possibilities at all. So we'll see how that ends up coming to fruition. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a little not slight risk, marginal risk, just in this region right here. It's possible that some of these could form into supercells or just tornadic storms, really severe in any way. So it's possible they add a little risk there, but it's, again, this day is not going to be as severe as people thought originally. When we first looked at this trough, we saw a huge swath of 500 millibar flow. And if I go now to 500 millibars, I'm going to the continental United States as well. Something that's happening with this trough is actually very positively tilted. So positively tilted troughs means that they kind of align themselves like this. Essentially what this means is that it's not as really good for severe weather. Severe weather events usually happen with troughs that are more based with tight flow on this end of the trough and kind of oriented like so. The way I can tell with this is just because of how these lines kind of work, right? You can kind of see these isobars here, and they're going like so, and as I go through the flow, something like this, right? That kind of gets an axis of this trough, which is more, again, it's more based this way. This is also a lot easier to see as well if we keep looking down further into the atmosphere. Same thing here. These contour lines are very close together, these isobars, and the axis you can see a little easier. I can keep going down. It's the same idea. Essentially, this did not end up being nearly as negatively tilted as it was a few days ago when I made my original video. And that is kind of the fate of this trough. It's not going to do too much, thankfully, for people in the southeast. And they have dealt with a lot of rain. That's the only real thing. If I look at the current radar, there's actually quite a lot of flood watches and warnings. So this is a flood watch area, the flood warnings, all these little greens. That is something we talked about earlier in another forecast. WPC did very well at forecasting that as well. The last thing I want to talk about with this system is going to be snow. We'll bring a little bit of snow to the northeast states, New York and stuff. Some pretty heavy stuff here as well, according to the RAP model as well. This is our general idea of this trough. Once this moves somewhat over the Atlantic, it's going to pull in a lot of moisture. This will just basically just get sent right in here. As this rotates up, it's going to get dumped into the New York, this whole area. So that's another system of, rain snow line. Where will that be? So if I get a little closer here as well. Again, it just depends on where the rain snow line will be. Which side will get the rain, which side will get the snow. So There are chances of upwards of, 8 inches over a certain time, according to this model. It just really depends. So we'll see how that pans out as well. 6 hour snow accumulation. That is something I quite like to use in this channel. Again, similar thing. 7 inches, 6 hours. Northeast could see some snow as well. Another thing I also promised to talk about in this forecast was possible snow for the Midwest states as well. So this model doesn't get really far enough for it, but if we look at 500 millibars again, there's an Alberta Clipper type system here. So here is up here. This is our low pressure. We can see wind barbs are moving more this direction and then move more this direction. They kind of turn as they go here. That's how we tell there's low pressure here. That's how I'm seeing it. So I would send this right here, and essentially this is just kind of getting boosted down from Canada very quickly. Right here it is now. And this will even bring a lot of very cold temperatures to the Carolinas as well. If you look at standard temperature anomalies based on like averages for right now, there's a chance that this brings some cooler temperatures, although not nearly as much as I saw earlier, actually. So earlier that I saw upwards of like 10 degrees here, just completely changing. But that did not come to fruition in this model for sure. So snow-wise, amounts are obviously very hard to tell this far out. This could lead to some lake effect snow. It really depends on the surface temperatures as well. We're seeing a lot of warmer air kind of being pumped up here, just from the past few days. Here in northern Illinois, it's been a lot warmer than usual, so we'll see how that pans out as well. Last thing I want to talk about in this forecast is a kind of interesting weather pattern that could emerge pretty soon. So right now I'm looking at a ensemble forecast, and that basically means there's 20 ensemble members right here. So this is 20 different weather models that all get combined into an average. So especially it's very accurate for short range. This is our trough moving across the United States at the current moment. And as it goes on, it kind of gets more linear, right? Just everything going one direction, because everything will even out an average. But at 180 hours, February 3rd, February 4th, there's a very large belt of flow right here, which kind of indicates something going on here. If we look at the European model, see a very, very strong belt of flow. 130 knots is extremely strong. You can see how bright these colors are. This trough that's very flat, which is quite strange, honestly, but that could be interesting as well. And GFS is showing a similar thing. Very strong belts of flow. So, kind of interested to see how that pans out. Right now, I'm quite frankly not too sure what all this would mean. This is weird to not have a high pressure system above the low pressure system. There's a high here. I can draw that H. There's a low here, and a low somewhere over here. It's probably about right there. Very unique weather pattern, and I will see how that pans out. Again, I'm still trying to learn things, so bear with me on these forecasts. Take it with a grain of salt. As a result, in a summary from our last forecast, I will say I was fairly accurate with the heavy rainfall in the southeast here. I'll try to take away the borders real quick, just to kind of show where stuff is happening. Down here in the southeast, we were right about rainfall, because if we look currently right here, all these flood warnings, it's pretty accurate. Freezing rain was not nearly as significant as I thought. Again, I live in this region where the freezing rain did fall. It wasn't too severe. It wasn't a huge deal, but it did happen. And obviously freezing rain is definitely not a good thing for anyone involved. So last forecast I think was pretty successful, and hopefully we'll see something similar for this one. With that, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next forecast.